what's up, everybody? This is Krishna.
Aloha, everyone.
So, we want to talk about heart loss, and what was the other one?
Heart loss and what were we talking about? At 11:11. Oh, vulnerability.
Oh, vulnerability. Vulnerable ability. Vulnerability is an ability. A lot of people think of it as a weakness, and the reason why we think of it as a weakness is because our ego wants to judge vulnerability because we draw on it during weak times. Why do we draw it on weak times? Because it's a superpower.
Yeah.
And one of the challenges, there's going to be many during this, one of the challenges is I want you to draw from vulnerability in good times, in bad times, in just okay times. And then that's when you truly start to see it's a superpower. Because a lot of us, it's like the analogy of the thermostat. There's a lot of people going online saying, be a thermostat, don't be a thermometer. Thermometer just tells the temperature of the room. A thermostat is able to shift and take it. But the thermostat only has a range. So if it gets too cold, it'll kick on the heat. Gets too hot, it'll put on the air conditioning. But you still only have a range.
Right.
How do we break past that glass ceiling?
Yeah.
Because everybody's tolerating some bullshit. And a lot of times when we fall in love, then our heart gets broken. And then every time your heart gets broken, it expands. So that vulnerability that appears to be a weakness, and maybe it's making you aware of a weakness that we have within, so we can become stronger and we can tap into that superpower that's always living inside of us.
Yeah, for sure. I'm ruminating on this very profound statement you just made around like this idea of love or being in love, for instance.
Profound, look at that.
And how every time we get it broken, it expands. And I'm thinking of like the snake, because we're in the Chinese zodiac, we're in this year of the snake, right? And this idea of like shedding your skin, right? You like break free and you get to be like a new version of you. But I would imagine that breaking free probably doesn't feel like the best always. Like there's probably some levels of discomfort. And I'm just thinking about my own experiences with heartbreak and that imprint that it leaves. And when we focus on just the breaking part, we're missing like the fullness of what's possible. Yeah.
For sure. Why? I look at it like this. And I don't think I originally came. I originally came to this determination by myself, but I'm sure there's 1,000 people all over the world, or 10,000 people, or 100,000 people that came to the same determination. It's like a GPS, a God positioning satellite. So we live in San Diego. Say we're gonna drive to LA. So we make a wrong turn, then the GPS recalculates a new turn. We go on a wrong freeway and go this way, or we say we have to go over there. So what that God positioning satellite is telling us, the GPS, that's a global positioning satellite, but our God positioning satellite, or our intuition, is telling us, you need to go over there and learn this over here. So when you get to your final destination, which will be not your final destination, when you get to your final destination, you'll have the tool, the gift, the lesson, the win that will help you come over here. So say you want to be a CEO of your company, and you want to have this company that's going to change the world. You might have had to go on a little detour, which in French means the tour. You have to go on your detour to come over here to learn this. So maybe you need to learn self-esteem, confidence. You need to learn how to lead people. So when you get to your final destination, you're you'll run smoother. That's why humility, vulnerability, because we're letting those tools seep into our nervous system. Have you heard the phrase of like you're at the top of your 100-foot pole?
No.
So, and I think it's from I don't know what tradition, but you're at the top of your 100-foot pole. And if you're at the top of your 100-foot pole, you can't go any further. So you have to fall down and collapse to make it to the top. Because say if I was still in high school, I would be running that motherfucker like crazy. I would be like, everybody would be wearing the same clothes, but you're like, dude, you've been in high school for 40 years. It's time to get off your 100-foot post situation.
Yeah.
Beating up parents and shit.
Yeah.
Your son was talking shit to me. I can't hit your son, so I'm gonna beat you up. So a lot of times, have you ever heard the phrase "big fish in a small pond"?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's a lot of times if we want to go over to our next goal, we have to let go of the last step.
Yeah.
And that takes vulnerability.
Yeah.
And sometimes we intend it, and then everything collapses. So in Southern California, the people that are having fires and having a lot of times, they just got in a bad situation that their house burned down. Some, that could be a serious blessing in disguise.
For sure, it's part of that GPS.
Yeah,
that you
for
just
sure,
mentioned.
100%.
For sure.
100%.
Yeah.
So, what are some tools that you use to tap into that heart of being able to love the world and being vulnerable to love the world, even though the world's not perfect?
Yeah.
To be of service to people that probably don't even appreciate you.
Yeah. I mean, I think for me personally, the most simplistic thing that I like to practice is like staying in the truth of my inner being, which is the love frequency. Sometimes it's really challenging to feel that love if maybe you're going through something challenging, or you see some injustice in the world, or whatever that might be. And that's where compassion comes in, you know. Like, I have compassion for myself that I'm in this moment, you know, compassion for self first. And then it allows for that seeping in to be compassionate for others and circumstance that might be occurring in the world. Because that old saying, hurt people, you know, there's that perpetual loop. So if I'm hurting, I have to be aware and be compassionate with myself around what is my true experience, you know. And I feel like that's, like, as the most base foundation, how I try my best to live in the world. And I'll be vulnerable and share with you. Sometimes it's freaking hard. It is very challenging sometimes, you know, just, again, depending on the circumstance. Recently, I've been having some, like, in my grieving process, I've been having some, like, memories of, like, people who've done me wrong. Maybe it's Mercury retrograde. I have no idea, but I've been, like, having unpleasant dreams and just...
Are these things that you've already resolved?
Or pretty much.
Yeah.
I thought I resolved.
Yeah.
I resolved.
Those are coming up for me too.
I'm like, why am I thinking about this? I don't give a fuck about that. But clearly, something needed to be processed, and so, like, just practicing that compassion piece of, like, okay, this thing is coming up for a reason. Maybe it's that 100-foot pole thing, where I'm needing to break through something. And in that compassionate practice or approach, I like to be really thoughtful about sitting with myself or giving myself that time to be with myself. And have learned over time the spaces, like the physical environment that helps me be able to just be with myself. So there's something about the water that was extremely purifying and healing for me. So when I'm having those moments, I'll go take myself to the beach or to some water source. And even if I don't have access to like a river or a lake or an ocean, I'll go get in the shower or get in the bath, you know, and have that moment with the water to clear and purify my thoughts, so that whatever is coming to the surface can be at least tangible for me to grab onto, so that if it requires me to reflect about it, meditate on it, I can do so. And if it's something that just needs to be washed away, it can also, you know, with the water element, can do that. So the water is very healing in that way. But yeah, just really thinking about how can I be with myself to allow time to process whatever's coming up. And for me, I wind up uncovering that my own inner child wounds around feeling unsafe, that adults can't keep me safe, and that they're not trustworthy, or that I need to be cautious about other people's intentions, came up. And so all the other memories about things that happened in my life, it wasn't really about those people. It was about the inner me and the wound of the child that my higher self needed me to see that. Needed me to see that, to see where I've grown, but also where I continue to grieve that inner child and the things that were very heartbreaking as a child.
So for me, there was a time that I called like communing with people traffic, like going into traffic. And in between 10 to 15 years ago, a lot of people aren't going to believe this. But if you see me sometimes in public, you can believe it. I had to force myself to go in line at the grocery store. Instead of checking out at the places, I had to force myself to talk to somebody because I had so much PTSD from dealing with people. But I knew I had to get out of the way to be able to deal with people, because I had been burned so bad so many times. And it's not, the getting burned didn't stop. It actually became more. I was just able to tolerate it more. Tolerated it more as it happens. And then I was like, okay, I'm done with that person. Let me move on to a situation. Heartbroken, let me feel into that. Let me channel into that pain. And then move from there. And here's one of the things that I've done over the time. And I feel a lot of times it's like the thermostat thing. A lot of times I do it. Most of the time I do it. I don't have to do it. But because if I'm looking in the thermostat, too cold, the heat kicks on. Too hot, the air conditioning kicks on. What I do is I channel into the fact. I'm in a coffee shop. I'm sitting there. I order my tea, and then I'm whispering I love you to everybody. And what that does is it creates a vortex that these people that could be a childhood wounds, all these people hate me, they're going to do this and everything. Or I don't know scientifically if I'm affecting the energy of the place, but I know it changes the way that in business, how I move in the world.
Sure. Yeah.
Because and that's one of the things with grow locally. A lot of times people are less apt to pee on the strawberries that people in their community are going to be eating it. Situation. So we're getting places from different country, and there's a disconnect. Or if we go military wise, somebody that's going to be doing stuff in hand-to-hand combat, opposed to somebody that's in a building in whatever city that you're in, bombing people in the Middle East in a drone strike.
Right.
It's so disconnected. It's like playing a video game to some of these people, because they're not even doing it. And then let alone AI, it's just programming it once, and then while you're in Tahiti, it's just like laying people off and doing a lot of things. We have to become mindful in a balanced sort of way, and that's why I've been continuing able to get out of the way, is because I want to plant seeds that this isn't a good thing to be doing.
Yeah.
even though a lot of times I'm not meeting a lot of these people firsthand. Anything you wanted to add to that?
No.
There was I was dealing with a guy who he was going to have it so drones were delivering instead of Postmates or that the drones would be delivering it. And he's like, well, it'd be a lot more effective. They just pick it up from the restaurant and then the drone goes over there. And I was like, well, you're putting people out of work. And I go, and I don't know anybody. So I know a few people, but mostly it's just people that are going to the front of the line at the places that I'm at, just walking by. A lot of times I'm not even saying hi to them, don't know their name and everything, and that's enough that, no, I don't want to put these people out of work. Because the more that we can disconnect it, so me going online, being able to look in somebody's eyes and have that connection, or be saying I love you to the people that are in there, it's changing the environment than me, then I'm less apt to pee on the strawberries that of whatever that means in many different ways, because a lot of people just disconnect it. They're like, oh, that doesn't bother me. So it's like, well, why do you have like I smoke weed, but I'm talking about why do people have like destructive drinking too much and a lot of different things when they say stuff doesn't bother them.
Sure, yeah. You know, as you share, I have a question, so if you feel called to share, feel free. But I'm curious around like this idea of being vulnerable, to open up your heart space to strangers, right? Like someone, like in this scenario that you offered, you know, you just come into a space, you have the intention of making a positive energetic impact to the space. So you open up your heart, which can be vulnerable or feel vulnerable, to people that you don't know. Do you ever think of it that way, like that it's being vulnerable, or like when you approach it, is there like some other thought process that you have around like opening yourself up, even if it's not something verbally expressed to like the
so
people
on the spectrum of character flaw, I would say a lot of ways that I frame certain things is I find comfortable ways to do stuff that I'm uncomfortable doing.
Yeah. That's your superpower.
Yeah, for sure. I find, okay. But I would say it is flawed, but it's not. It's something that I don't care because it's not extremely flawed. So being able to do that, because also I'm whispering, they don't know. A lot of times I'll bring it up in a video here, or I'll say it to somebody who might be in the coffee shop. It's like, because I drive mainly around the area, I might say it to somebody that they're doing it, and I don't want anybody to know, but also for the fact of when I started doing this, I don't need to do it anymore. When I started doing this, it's like I'd be real depressed. I was not chronically depressed, but just not feeling good because things weren't working out and everything. And after doing this, I would feel a lot better, because then I'd be like, because it's not an issue now. Sometimes it's an issue, but rarely. But it was always an issue before. It was like, why do I want to do something that's gonna improve the world? Like, I hate most of these people.
Why do they deserve my love?
Yeah, like, why do I want to do that?
For sure. Yeah, I guess the full range of emotions, right? Like, as we be really honest and vulnerable about this path of life and all the different, things we have to go through. I often like to talk about kind of the yin and the yang, or the darkness and the lightness, or the extremities, the dualities, or the idea or the experience of dualities in this world. And so, like, if we want to experience peace or trust, or we want to experience fullness, success, purposefulness, all that, we have to also know and get a taste for whatever that opposing emotion or feeling might be, so that it brings fullness, more vibrancy to that particular experience, you know? So, like, I'll go back to grief because, you know, I've been processing that recently. And in order for me to really appreciate what it feels like to feel whole, to feel love, you know, to feel safe and trusting connections, I have to grieve the loss of those trusting connections and really kind of like honor all that it provided me. And so, yeah, just like thinking about that fullness, that full experience of what it is to be heart-centered, you know, what it is to actually experience all of those love feelings that we like to focus on all the things that feel pleasant and maybe not so much on the ones that don't feel so pleasant, but they're so necessary for that fullness.
On the spectrum of virtue signaling, a lot of times I'm not one of those people that you like see doing a video that's like somebody at a protest to say I'm here because you're not here or something like that. When somebody that has that sign is like, it's like, what are you representing? You like, yeah, obviously you're there. Like, what are you representing? Why are you gonna make me feel guilty about not being there? And I don't even know why you're there in the first place.
The guilty part, right? Like, why do individuals like to go there? I think it's a programming thing personally.
Yeah, for sure. So looking at that, I'm like, a lot of times, I'm not always wanting to share it, but I think it's a lot of times when I'm not feeling good or feeling appreciated, then I want to virtue signal a little, like letting people know that I'm doing it, or all of a sudden people like start waking up because we have a new person in office and all of a sudden they're doing it. And I was like, well, I'm consistent every day for a good 15 to 20 years. Like, I'm consistent every day. I'm glad that we're going to strike while the ironing is hot, and we'll act like all of a sudden the world got worse. Like, all of a sudden on this day, okay, well, we'll do that. Like, how long is it going to be before you fall asleep? Situation. So don't point blame because I didn't say something properly, because I wasn't at the meetings, because I wasn't at the protest and everything like that. I'm at work, not all day every day, but every day. Not all day every day, but every day I'm at it on a consistent basis. And I'm helping out the old white guys, helping out the gays, helping out the lesbians. I like to help the lesbians. No, I'm joking.
Or queer.
or queer. What are some other things you do? You talk about your juice.
Oh,
your juicing.
yeah.
That's a way of showing your love.
Yeah. So you might have seen me sipping on something here a moment ago. I just completed my little daily. I don't know how much this is. Maybe like 8 ounces, 10 ounces, or something. But recently, again, as I've been sharing, you know, I've been processing some grief, and my body has been telling me you need to be more clean and clear. And so I decided that I was going to go on a juice fast. So I started off with a juice fast, and I did a 3-day juice fast. And I felt like a lot of my really deep despair type of sadness feelings started dissipating. The grief is not complete. Like, I'm still in my process. But that despair feeling of the sadness kind of started dissipating, and I was able to like have memories without it feeling so emotionally painful. And I really, like, just beside like the boost of energy and all of that, my skin started glowing up. I'm thinking, oh gosh, I'm more beautiful. Woo! So I decided to continue on in this momentum. And so now I'm on, today's my 11th day, and I am just feeling just electrical and I want to say positive because that is how I'm feeling. I'm feeling kind of like a growth spurt, if you will, an energetic growth spurt. Positive, I think, is just too layman. It doesn't encompass the fullness of what I'm feeling, but it definitely feels like my energy has expanded. And as I said, as I've shared, there's been some really deep emotions that have been coming to the surface, and I really believe it's attributed to me giving myself that like super electrical boost of energy. So for people that don't know, you know, juicing, it's amazing. What are we doing?
We're not talking about steroids.
right. I don't know enough about that.
Okay.
But yes, juicing is amazing. You know, beside the nutrient density, um, anything that is a fruit, specifically fruit, they're highly alkaline and highly electrical. So when you consume that, even if it's not in a juice, you just, you know, consume it, a full piece of fruit, you're going to get a boost of electrical energy. So when you choose to give yourself things that are electrical, you literally are very highly a high conductor of energy, right? So if you're wanting to tap into insights and so forth, connecting with some electrical energy is really, really powerful. So then you combine that with other practices that can also promote that electrical energy in your body, like meditation. Woo! Talk about life changing.
One of the ways that I show love to myself is when I'm walking. I go on a walking meditation, and like every movement is perfect. Like every movement is perfect. I used to joke when I was in a relationship. I would wake up and like say she would leave out of town. I was like I was an idiot, and then she left, and then like a couple days, and that's the type of relationship I was in 20 years ago. But I would say like after 2 days, I was like, oh, not that bad, because it's like oh, don't throw that stuff on the ground, don't do this. It's like it's a lot of different stuff, and that happens on both sides. There's no questions about that. But after like 3 days, I was like, holy shit, you're like really smart. And then after a week of her being gone, I was like all of a sudden I was back to geniusness. So I like that, and you can go way too far on this. No question about that. So you could think like your shit doesn't stink to a certain level, but I'm able to do that and then be able to transition when I'm dealing with other people and focusing. Okay, is this project being manifested? Because you're always going to be dealing with. Sorry, not most of the time. You're going to be dealing with BS, but are we actually manifesting this project? Is one. I have this way that I frame things. Am I having fun? Having fun has to do with excitement, sustainability, because I know if I get bored, I'm not going to be sustainable about it, because I'm not suffering one little bit to save the world, because I know then I get in the realm that I was like, oh, I hate the world, I don't want to do this, and then I'm going to sabotage. And I don't believe that we should ever, I don't believe we have to compromise.
For sure. Yeah.
I think a lot of times that's just a power play. That's a lot of ego on a lot of different forefronts. Am I having fun? Am I being conscious? Is this project making the world better? Am I being conscious in that way? And then making money. And the full formula combined is building value. By hitting those three things. The mind sees things in threes, so I like to always simplify things and put it in threes. Am I having fun? Am I being conscious? Am I making money? Being conscious is 100% have to. If so making something better, not making the world better. Sometimes if it's neutral, it's like, okay, this thing kind of sucks. It's neutral. It's not doing that. But I'm making money. Then I'm like, oh, I could use this money to put it into projects that make it sustainable. And okay, I'm not having fun, but it's not going to take that more time. So I'm going to be able to delegate it and put it together. So I'm not spending much time for it because I just don't have any excitement about the project. So I look at running it through that because I want to enjoy this three-dimensional world, five-dimensional world. I want to really enjoy what's going on. I don't want to sit there suffering, I want to think about what's going on in the world, but I'm laughing at stuff. It's like she knows this for sure. It's like I feel there's very little reasons for. I'm not going to go out of my way to suffer. Sure.
It's interesting because some individuals, maybe it's unconscious, and maybe for some it's conscious, but they seek suffering. Like, it's normal that suffering is just an inherent part of life, and they seek that through their choices. And then they wonder why they don't have success, they don't feel fulfilled, X, Y, and Z. They're not healthy or well. So important.
I think about those. I haven't seen a woman like this now, but those women back in the day that were wearing all black. They probably were never married, and their husband didn't die. But they're sitting there with their rosary beads, and they like stand like this and everything, and you look at that person, it's like, oh, she really loves God like a lot and everything, but it's a lot of times that's we're all actors in a lot of different ways, but a lot of that's just acting. Because if you take Mother Teresa, and I'm sure somebody's gonna get mad at me, but
unpopular opinion.
Yeah, Mother Teresa, and I may have brought this up several times. And Mother Teresa, while she's watching those kids dying, the Catholic Church could have fed them with the gold that they stole from a lot of different places at some point in time. And like, they could have fed those children and instead of just helping them find Jesus.
Sure. Yeah.
So Mother Teresa was being used by the Catholic Church. It was nice that she was there, but she should have been speaking up against them, saying, why don't you feed these motherfuckers? I mean, she didn't have to cuss.
Yeah.
Now we got to get on her for cussing. Come on, Mother Teresa, you're better than that.
I'm always curious about, the things that happen behind the scenes that we don't know about, like what you're proposing, like, was Mother Teresa really, don't hate on me for this comment, but was she really a good Samaritan? Was she really, did she really provide that? Or was it what you're saying? Is she a martyr? Or behind the scenes, was she advocating for these things, but didn't feel that she could publicly speak on these topics? So much could be true all at once, but it's a good thing to think about when we are kind of talking about this topic around the heart, being in the heart, loss, and also ways that we can be in the heart space in our life.
I was telling a guy actually who works for the federal government earlier, and I was telling him that I'm a hippie that was raised by a military man, and what that means in general is I actually want to solve the problems that when I'm in a group and individually complaining about, because a lot of times people would do a better problem just doing nothing. Because they want to keep these problems alive.
For sure, it gives them something to talk about, to criticize. For sure. Yeah.
Because it's like I knew this guy who was had like the autism that a Bill Gates would have, and they don't call it Asperger's anymore, but would have that type of autism. And he had many different. He's a spiritual guy, and he had many different answers with copper and different things to help ground a lot of people. He'd go over to these autistic organizations, and they didn't want to. They would listen to him, but they didn't want to actually solve problems to it. And you can even speak their language a lot of times. You can say, okay, I can find funding for you, and a lot of different things. And these people will go in there, and they don't actually want to solve these problems because, and I know we all have that on a certain level. What is a security guard? A security guard a bouncer in a bar wants a certain level of fights to happen because that creates job security.
Right. Exactly.
So we all are privy, and we all have a certain integrity that comes up. That am I really, as healers, are we really helping people resolve issues? Or are we just like the mainstream medicine, in my opinion, just keeps people sick?
Yeah.
Are we doing that on some level? There's always a challenge for that, and there might be okay, I'm gonna charge people a lot because I'm gonna figure stuff out in an hour. That might be the happy medium in between of being in the world but not being of the world. That might be the happy medium, or finding a way to be able to. I find ways to be able to help people without charging them, because for one, I feel everybody goes too slow for me. And I like to slow things down, but everybody wants to slow, and then they're relying on, because there's certain like for instance, a homeless person, and I've kind of went into this, but a homeless person that is wearing a suit is gonna, like a real nice $1,000 suit. They're gonna have to come up with a real good story for people to give them money. They got to be a little dirty.
Sure.
I've heard this in India, and I've seen many different that they'll put acid on some kids there to give them deformities so they can make more money.
Gosh.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that doesn't happen here to that extreme, as far as I know, but what if we want to survive? The homeless person knows certain, like I've had people that have come up to me and said, oh, I just got out of the hospital situation. And intuitively, I know they didn't just get out of the hospital, but they knew one time they got out of the hospital and that worked for them. So they're able to use that story again. We all do that. We're what we are is we're a bunch of atoms and quirks that figure out how to strategize to be able to get what we want in this world.
Survival mechanisms. It's also a form of intelligence, because you see that in children.
For sure.
You know, they learn like what context, how to say what to get what they want and need. It's really interesting.
Yeah, and we are children, but it's all about doing it in a more conscious way.
Yeah.
We all do it. It's all about doing it in a more conscious way.
Yeah. You know, for a long time, I worked in nothing but
No, I didn't know that.
nonprofits.
Oh.
And
do you know atheism is the only non-profit organization?
Interesting.
Non-profit.
Interesting.
You know how I'm spelling profit?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Dad joke. Dad joke. Or in my case, daddy joke.
So I've spent a lot of my life invested in nonprofits, because I was believed that nonprofits are for the people, and they were do-good organizations, entities. And so I poured a lot of my professional life into a lot of different organizations. And I've always had a very deep passion for learning, for growth, for supporting people in that journey. And so started with very young children, and then kind of worked my way in many different types of fields or disciplines. But in my years of spending time in these nonprofits, I soon learned exactly what you're saying. That it doesn't profit the nonprofit to solve the issues within the population that they serve. That's why they don't ask the people what they want or need. Because when I was working in these institutions, one of the last one, and I will leave them nameless, they were a $1 million+ dollar funded agency. They received a lot of monies to specifically help to bridge community. And my particular role was intended to work with community, create networks, and build collaborative relationships and gatherings, events for people to tap in. And I would go to management meetings, and here I am, fairly young and new in this, agency, and
so full of life.
Willing
to stick your neck out.
Super wanting to be an
The world is
advocate.
beautiful.
Here I am, championing for the community. I want to take what they're saying back and be an advocate for change. And here I am.
I'm glad we didn't meet back then.
Yeah, right. I'm pushing up against all of these individuals who don't want to hear what I have to say. they do not 100% want to hear what I have to say. And it's at first made me really angry. It made me so upset. Like, how y'all are fuckeries, you know, like you guys don't care about this community, you know. And after a while, obviously I left this organization because moralistically I just could not. But what I learned, what I took from it was reflections around all the other nonprofits I had participated in, learning why they do what I liked. What I started calling is the silo effect, meaning they have funds, they're meant to work with just a very specific population to do a very specific thing, and in the grant nowhere does it ever say, you know, end poverty or, you know, somehow improve their lives with these specific things. Like, nowhere does it say that. And I understood later that in order for those organizations to still be in effect, let's call out USAID, you know, USAID, for instance, is a good example of that, on a large scale. They don't profit by them coming in and providing solutions, resolutions to people's plight. They only profit by keeping individuals in that circumstance. And I'm saying keeping because the system is created much like I worked for Health and Human Services, the cash aid program for a while. So I saw what that's like too. It's meant to keep people in this cycle. And that's when I began to really realize that in order for me to be an actor in this, you know, evolution of the world, I needed to do something very different. I needed to remove myself from those and process some of the frustrations that I had felt participating, because I was a participant in that. But then thinking about, you know, because I had to go through my own guilt and grief around that, and then come to a place where I have more knowledge and awareness about that so that something can change, you know. And then I founded Social Change Coalition years later and started grassroots and, you know, having conversations with beautiful people like you to talk about what does community need? How do we want to reimagine education, for instance, you know? What are the support systems that parents actually need so that they can thrive in their parenting, so on and so forth.
And a good example of what, for her, the GPS God positioning satellite took her over there, going through that experience so she could get just frustrated enough and heart-centered enough through her suffering, being able to get to the point that she has an understanding of what it takes. One thing for me is I was doing a project, I do a feeding people in Pakistan, helping out poor people that are going through stuff, telling their stories, and having the guy that edits my videos, I came up with the idea for him to video. He's in Pakistan and he speaks the language. I had for him to interview poor people and do their stories, and then we give him some money. And in the process, after he decided that I was like, oh, I can do this, I'm going to do it great, I'm going to take a week to research these things for you and everything. And then he comes back to me, he's like, what do you think the people of Pakistan need? And I said, I have fucking no idea. I've never been to Pakistan.
Right.
I have no idea.
Right.
You said you could take this on. And based on the hierarchy, he feels, and he's starting to see me as a peer more, but it took as he's seeing me like I've come from the U.S., I'm privileged, I know everything, I have the good schooling and everything like that. I was like, no, because one, I'm looking from a certain way. This is going to take me too much time to have an understanding that he's seeing things in the three dimensions on a daily basis. Yeah. And me putting too much of my energies in there is going to take time, and also I'm gonna be coming from a perspective that might not be aligned on it. He's closer to where they are. He's going to be able to see things from his perspective. So a lot of times it's like letting go, and I don't let my ego, which I have an ego just like everybody else, but I don't let my ego feed me in a way that I'm just like, oh, you need this. A lot of times I've given a ride to a 15-year-old. I've asked this question many times, like, what is it like to be a 15-year-old in 2025?
Right.
Like, what is it like to be in there?
Yeah. Yeah.
And if they go negative a lot of times, then I'll say, I think this is really a good time. We need to like look at this as a challenge that we're having. Like I'll put my positive thing in there because I'm just not gonna let them live in that negative. I figure like I'm gonna give a chance to give her perspective. So I am listening, but I'm guiding it to a certain extent, but also knowing like some of the ways that I would explain something to you opposed to explain something to them. Their GPS hasn't taken them on a lot of different paths, so they might not understand some of the things. Some of my jokes, but they might not understand because I'm using a friend's reference opposed to. So a lot of times it's a big challenge to be able to be in that place, but they are seeing stuff that I'm just not privy to. My intern at one point, she was talking about how a lot of and I might have brought this up too, that she was talking about how a lot of the college age students, when they were in junior high, vapes were new.
Right.
So they were vaping in class.
Right.
Because the teacher didn't know it, so a lot of them are addicted.
Right.
To it. So I have a vision to do, because of a lot of the bad stuff that's going on with of them using our information to put ads to it. I have a lot of information to find the key words that those people are searching for to give classes that are free, and even like discounts or footing the bill on different avenues for certain things that are in a more healthy. So I'm taking a lot of the negative things that are going, well, the more higher something vibrates, there is no positive and negative to a point. So I'm taking a lot of things that people will look at in society. It's like, oh, I can't believe that exists. Well, it does exist. How can we leverage that in a more enlightened sort of way?
Right. Yeah. And it's leading me to one of the questions we were pondering to reflect on during today's session around how can heartbreak, or maybe something associated with that, experiencing poverty, or, having your house burned down and losing all of your material things, or like how could these types of circumstances lead us to that path, that route, that detour for that not best, let me rephrase, to that highest timeline that is most matched with what our soul wanted us to accomplish in this incarnation. Because, right, we're not privy to that information for a reason. Because we're meant to take all of these different detours, right, part of the path, to help us. And just thinking about that for myself, in this moment.
I did some film projects with some college students who felt that it was their destiny to be in Hollywood, but they weren't willing to humble themselves to dig deep inside to do film projects that would earn them in that situation. So a lot of time when we sit back on our hands and say, oh yeah, it's like I'm going to be the next such and such, or I forgot it was one of the big filmmakers, like they said they want to be the next Scorsese or whatever like that, and I was like, yeah, you're trying to follow his path exactly and be accepted by Hollywood. If he was 20, because that was around their age at the time, he would be putting so much content on YouTube at that certain point. And I gotta beg you guys sometimes to film when I don't care about putting film out at all. Like I don't care about it at all. Sure. I care for the back. I'm a hippie raised by a military man. If I'm going to talk about something, we're going to manifest that. And if you're going to stop wanting to manifest that, then I'm gone. Because I have many different options. I could work on my own projects. I can find people that want to collaborate and do stuff. I could be at the beach doing nothing.
With the sun.
I could be chasing ducks and just laughing.
Yeah.
That are way more than like sitting there just seeing your ego.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because the willing, just people being unwilling to get out of the way at anyone and coming up with a scheme. I mean, I went to 8.5 years of Catholic school, and my father was in the military. I can come up with an excuse. You could wake me up in the middle of the night and ask me why I did something. I'm gonna come up with an excuse before I even like if I talk to my sleep, I could come up with an excuse why I'm sleeping. I always have an answer to that because that was the breaking. But could I use that in a way that holds me back from it? And it happens. It happens. I'm aware of it. Sometimes I was like, okay, you did this. Okay. Limit the fact that you do that. Try not to do that at all. But be aware when you're doing it. Not all the time, but trying to be aware of when you're coming up with this excuses that don't serve you. Because there's excuses that are protecting me, and then there's excuses that that aren't serving me in any capacity.
It's reminding me even of like this theme that I've been bringing up around like grief and heartbreak and loss or suffering. You know, because suffering is a choice. Clearly, suffering happens when we're choosing to stay in a vibration that feels unpleasant, because pain, that's something that we will all experience in some form, whether it's mental, physical, or emotional. But I'm just thinking about that, you know, how if we choose to stay in heartbreak and not let the momentum of that energy help propel us to shed the skin and move to the next level for ourselves, how we are disservicing ourselves or making excuses we're making excuses that are preventing us from moving into the next version of ourselves. So it's almost like we're hindering our growth.
So I'm still single, but there was a time that I would tell a lot of my married friends about bad situations that I had with women. And I would tell them, and a lot of times they really wanted to hear the stories. And in a short time, I was all they like hearing the stories because it makes them feel happy that they're in relationships. So a lot of times, chads, as women call the guys, chads, those real douchey type guys, women can create community by talking about those guys.
Sure.
So that's something that is not service to them, putting in the situation. Yeah, it's fun, they laugh, they have that sisterhood bonding and everything. But why not bond? It's like, oh, my husband is so great. Then why not bond over something like that?
Right.
One feels better because you're in contrast, you're putting yourself in a very toxic situation, and then being with your sisterhood feels really good.
Feel better,
but it's based on contrast. Going back to when I used to watch Jerry Springer and then watch the Teletubbies. Teletubbies felt so good by the contrast of watching Jerry Springer, but I'm still taking in that Jerry Springer energy, but also it helped me my Teletubby, oh, the world is perfect, like this movement, it helped me think, oh, the world's perfect in every situation, but it got me in tune. It's like, oh, even though a lot of the Jerry Springer stuff was fake, there's really people that are suffering, that it's real, that stuff's going on with them.
Yeah.
That's the first time I saw Krisna. She was on Jerry Springer. I'm joking.
Just
clip that one piece right there.
Go check it out. Maybe, you never know. I might have a doppelganger that has appeared on Jerry Springer.
Oh yeah, blame it on the doppelganger. Anything else?
You know, I want to close with this piece of insight that I've received recently around the ways in which grief, heartbreak, or things that, you know, that feel heavy to us could actually be a source of supporting our growth and evolution. And I received this message recently while I went to sit near my my pet's grave and was having my moment. I was crying and speaking to her and asking her for forgiveness, because, you know, there's that guilt when someone transitions that perhaps you didn't do enough or say enough or be enough, and working through those feelings. And I received like this wave of gratitude, just the gratitude for feeling so deeply. And even though that feeling felt emotionally painful, that wave of gratitude came over me, and I was kind of shocked by that. I didn't expect that in that moment. And since then, I've had many meditative sessions on kind of that, going back to that feeling and connecting the two. And perhaps in the next session, I'll share a little more. But I want to end it with this idea or insight that grief could actually be the portal for us to experience gratitude. And gratitude is like the secret sauce in embodying the human being. Like what it is we're intended to be in this incarnation as a human. We're meant to connect with all life forms and be in gratitude for life itself. So I want to end with that.
Beautiful. Gratitude. What are you grateful for?
I'm grateful for you, Steve, honestly. I'm grateful for like-minded individuals who see me, who show appreciation even without words, and that show up in their authentic self unapologetically. I'm super grateful for that. Super grateful.
Thank you. Thank you for noticing that.
Yeah. What about you? What are you grateful for? You gotta tell us what you're grateful for.
What am I grateful for? I'm grateful for so many things. You know what? I'm grateful for being grateful. I'm transitioning to things are getting better, and there's a lot of things that were glorious and perfect for me that are boring to me now. And a lot of the things I'm working on aren't tangible right now, but as a visionary, they're tangible to me.
Yeah.
But I'm frustrated a little that they're not coming to the surface. And that's something that most of my spiritual path, last 20 years, I've been good at saying, oh, it's there. I feel it. But there's a contrast that it's like so much more bigger amount of success that it's a little frustrating to me. So I am grateful that in this moment right here, I'm stepping into the fact of acknowledging that I'm grateful without having to see that.
Yeah. Grateful for the feeling of that vision, even if it's not tangibly present in this moment of now.
For sure.
Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah. Well, we hope that those stories have inspired you, and we would love to hear your story. So if you have a story and you want to share something that we talked about today resonated with you, drop us a comment or send us a DM. We would love to hear that story.
Thank you very much.
Until
Peace.
next time.